Welcome to the Wampus Principal's Coffee. I'm just going to give a couple kind of reminders that parents will also get reminders about this evening at 3:30 in preparation for the state exams. And then we're going to have Mr. Pete Pollux talk a little bit about instrumentation at Wampus, and then Dr. Lamia and Mr. Siebert are going to talk about the 2023-2024 budget, which is we're in the middle of budget season. So that's the plan for today. As far as the state test, tomorrow and Thursday are the ELA exams, and then May 2nd and May 3rd are the mathematics exams. As we reminded the students this morning, they're very well prepared for these exams, and they will do well. And I think Dr. Lamy and I were speaking earlier today, sometimes kids, especially if this is their first time they ever took a state test, they start to think about these a lot and ask questions, and maybe they get a little nervous. And I think the best message to your kids is, A, to obviously do your best, and B, this is really information for us as a school in the district about how we instruct. That's really the goal of these tests. So anytime they ask you those questions, I think just a very simple baseline response like that, hopefully will get them there. Remind them to get to bed, obviously at a good time, have a good breakfast, get here on time, and they'll just do just fine. If anyone ever has any questions about state tests, obviously you can reach out to Ms. Palmer or myself. But other than that, we are ready. The building is ready. Third grade will be taking the paper-based exam, and fourth and fifth will be taking the computer-based exam. And the students for both the paper and the computer have done a practice test, so they know what to expect. So we're excited for the next 2 days. And if anyone misses the exams, there are makeup days, and any specific questions, reach out to us, but we'll take care of that. Any questions about the state test? You guys are good? All right, beautiful. Mr. Pete Pollux, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning. I'm Pete, I'm the Director of Fine Arts at Byram Hills, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the instrumental music program, which is grades 3, 4, and 5, where we're at right now, and next steps and what it might look like for ensembles for next year. So we'll start with the current third grade in terms of what we're at, where we're at, and next steps for third graders. So this year, the students in third grade learned about the instrument families in their general music classes. They selected 3 instruments that they were really interested in trying. We did a hands-on experience with them where they were able to actually try out the instruments. We had an entire team of faculty members that sort of sat and listened to them and sort of assessed where they were at, trying to anticipate the child's success and set them up for success moving forward. So we've gone through lots of steps to really pair each child with the right instrument. The step we're at right now is that the letters have been sent to families with the recommendations for instruments for next year. So right now it's really just the waiting game. So we're looking at the summertime where students are going to be renting an instrument with their families in preparation for September. So the information I'll share with you on the next slide is the packet. There's a QR code that you can sort of use, but this packet is actually a PDF, and in that packet there is a listing of all the instrument rental companies that our families have used over the years and found great success with, and so we just ask that they secure an instrument ready for September. So that's the deal with the third grade into fourth grade. They do what they can expect. In fourth grade they'll have 1 lesson per week with a staff member, and they were basically pulled out of that encore period, and that's our piece. There's not necessarily an ensemble in fourth grade yet. At the end of the year, they sort of pair them together, but really it's about the foundation of skills on each individual instrument. It's important to note that there is no chorus option in fourth grade, so sometimes parents ask about that, but really the chorus option begins in fifth grade, but they do an awful lot of singing in the general music class. So we'll go on to fourth grade. Right now, our current fourth graders, so many of them have been playing all year long. Nearly every student in fourth grade plays an instrument in band or orchestra. And so in preparation for next year, there are forms that have gone out in the general music classroom to parents, and those forms need to be returned by by Friday the 28th of April. And it's basically offering options to say, in fifth grade, what are they going to do? Are they going to continue on their instrument? Are they going to continue on a different instrument? Are they going to also join the chorus? And so this form will be sent home, and it's been sent home as this week and early next week, and then we'll ask that it's returned by the end of April. May 8th is the date that they will run auditions, because there are some students that are thinking in fourth grade, they're like, I really want to try the saxophone. And so what we do is we oftentimes begin them on clarinet, and then in fifth grade, we'll transition them to the saxophone because the fingerings are the same. And so May 8th, Mr. Wolf will host auditions for that. So some fourth graders may be switching instruments. This way they know how to secure the different instrument for the following school year. Make sense? I know it's a lot. Let's see. So what does participation look like in 5th grade? What's different in 5th grade is that they will now rehearse as an ensemble twice per week. They will still get their lessons. So let's say I'm playing trumpet in 4th grade. I have my lesson 1 time per week all year long. In 5th grade, I might play the trumpet. Now I get my lesson 1 time per week. And I also have 2 days of band during the week. So that might look like Monday, Wednesday, I've got band. Tuesday, I got my trumpet lesson. And then Thursday, Friday, I'm in my regular encore class. So that's what that looks like. They can also join the chorus in 5th grade. But you'll notice that there's an expanded instrumentation, and it's important to note the schedule change cutoff date, this is important for all grades 3, 4, and 5, is actually September 22nd. So it's the type of thing where if you say, listen, I really want to go for the trumpet, and the child says, listen, the trumpet's not for me, parents are like, this is stressing them out, I don't want to do this anymore. September 22nd is our cutoff date for any schedule changes because their entire schedule is really built around that sectional and their time. So next steps for 5th grade students. So this is a big step. So we're looking at 5th grade students currently. They're moving into a new building next year and they're thinking, what is happening with my ensemble? So our hope and our expectation is that they will continue in that ensemble. So if they're in the band or if they're in the orchestra, that they would continue in that ensemble. Again, there are papers that are going home with students this week and next that'll have to be returned by the 28th. And they're going to give 3 options. So option A, B, or C. And it really just says, I'm going to continue on my instrument. A nice piece that we rolled out last year was that students can indeed participate in both band and chorus, or orchestra and chorus. We do that in 5th grade, and we also do that at the middle school. So that's an exciting piece, and this form really just shows the students exactly what their choices are, so this way we can anticipate enrollment and schedules for the middle school. So in terms of our, what does participation look like in 6th grade? In 6th grade, students still get general music for 1 full marking period, the same way that they receive general music here in 5th grade. But then they'll also have their ensemble, and the ensembles meet a little bit more often than they do here at Wampus. We don't do individualized lessons, but we do is we have team teaching that's happening, and so they'll be able, one teacher will be able to pull a small group to instruct them during the period. So they might meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 45 minutes, and that class might be broken up differently, but that's how that ensemble piece works, and that's how we address small group instruction. Again, expanded instrumentation, so we're filling out to give a really authentic experience. You've got a lot more performance opportunities, and I think that's the piece. I think that's it for instrumental music. You'll see my contact information is here, and then there's some benefits at a glance, just the music education.
Pete, can I add one thing? We often get questions about, both of us, about what does that look like for a student's schedule at Wampus during Encore. So I think we say this at the back to school nights and orientations, but I think it's a good reminder. So if a child, let's say a 5th grader, they're in orchestra, okay, so they play the violin. They would have a violin lesson once a week. They would go to orchestra twice a week, right? So 3 of their encores, they would be going to music instead of encore. That is okay. The way the Encore program is designed, it's designed so kids can be pulled out, right? Next question sometimes is, okay, what happens if they violin and they want to do chorus? 1 day a week they're going to violin lesson. 2 days a week they're in orchestra ensemble. They would have choir, and then 1 day a week they go to Encore. Again, that's completely fine. Any students that may have some services, it's also fine. Let's say a child has to go to speech once a week. Their encore could be all music and speech, and they don't go to encore. That's fine. I think one of the things that's very developmentally appropriate in 5th grade that Pete really helped design is kids during that time period, much like in 6th grade in the wheel, the encore is designed so they can be pulled out, they can go to encore if they need to, they can go to ensembles once or twice a week. It's all naturally flowing, and the kids in 5th grade especially go all their separate direction, which is kind of nice too, because they mix it up with different groups of kids. Does that make sense as far as encore? Any questions about that? And with 4th grade, they have the instrument lessons where they would not go to encore once a week. So we get that question a lot. So
Great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a lot of information. Are there any other questions? Yes, please.
When do they stop taking music? Like if your child really doesn't like it, but they do it because they have to, because it's like after 8th grade, can they stop?
Well, A, that hurts my heart a lot.
No, I'm sorry. Both my kids are not musical in any way, so I just...
You know what? It's a really great point. I'm glad you asked that. And so I say to you, as a district, we Byram Hills, listen, we teach music because it teaches kids to think, and the critical thinking that happens in the classroom is why we do that. It's never with the lens of, let's turn our child into a professional musician. that could happen and we'll support that. However, it really is about thinking critically and problem solving. So that being said, the state requires that we have comprehensive and sequential music instruction up through and including 8th grade. In 7th grade it sort of switches a little bit, but there has to continue to be a spiraling path. So the options are still plentiful as we get through the high school, but this is why we have still general music in the 6th grade. In 7th grade and 8th grade, the state requirement's a little bit different, but we at Byram Hills still offer ensembles in 7th and 8th grade. So which is why in grades 6, 7, 8 we require students to be in ensemble, either band, orchestra, or chorus. So if the child is they're not playing an instrument, they said, listen, this is not for me, they will be required to be in at least chorus in grade 6, in grade 7, and then in grade 8 we actually offer another little option, which is sort of like a music technology path, so it's less performance oriented, but it still gives them the hands-on experience. The hands-on, I'll just end with, the hands-on experience is important because we don't teach music as, we teach music as a core discipline. So the same way that we don't teach math appreciation, we don't just teach music appreciation, right? We teach music as a core discipline where they're actually doing it. And doing it means actually performing, but that might not be on stage, that might be in the music technology setting. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Options, exactly. All right, well, thank you very much. I think at this time I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Lamia, who's going to lead our conversation on budget, and I thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, please reach out via email or telephone.
Thank you.
Dr. Lamia.
Thank you, Pete. And I'm Jen Lamia. I know almost everyone, but nice to meet you. And this is Kelly Seibert, and he is our business official, assistant superintendent for business. And today we're here to talk to you briefly about the budget. We have had budget hearings so far where we have explained the budget in a public session, in a board hearing. And then we will have the board, hopefully the adoption of the budget, which will occur tonight. And once the board adopts the budget, then it goes out to the public to vote on. We have our proposed budget for 23-24 is $99,725,037. The budget to budget increase is 2.87%. What does the budget include? Well, all the programs and services that have supported our students. We are engaging in a literacy study right now, which is very intense at the elementary level, K-5. We've had parent participation, administrators and teachers participating in that. We are funding programs starting from that all the way up to the high school, where if you're familiar with the high school, we have some very niche programs between our science research program, where we have somebody who was 8th in the nation in the Regeneron science research program. Pretty amazing. Our kids receive accolades over accolades for that program. We have Global Scholars at the high school, which is a 3-year program similar to science research in that you pick a topic and then you invest in that topic for 3 years, but it's about global issues, sort of like they say the other side of the moon to science research. And then we have something thanks to the Byram Hills Education Foundation, another new program, and by the way, they funded Global Scholars as a start, a new program called Startup, which is an entrepreneurship program, which is a 2-year program. So knowing that all of our student success can be supported that way. Every time we turn around and we see an interest, like Startup, we I don't know if you know this, but Byram Hills, a former alumni, is the inventor of the what is it called? The fidget spinners. Fidget spinners. I also remember, I don't know, 30-something years ago, a kid coming up to me and making those duct tape wallets, right? Like, I mean, kids are always interested in that kind of work, and that really takes us there. So all of our athletic programs also remain. We are very robust in athletics. 30 some odd years ago when I started, we were laughable in athletics, and now we have state championships. Our girls tennis at the high school won the state championship 2nd year in a row. We have 2 other state championships, and a big sign in town.
Flag football?
We now have flag football at the high school for girls. I mean, like, it's just evolving constantly, and that's what it helps to provide. And essentially what we ask for when we ask for the community to vote on and accept this budget is to accept that we want to cater an education to student interest, right? We want to hear something about students, like a student right now who's interested in sports broadcasting. When he was a freshman, he's now one of the big announcers at all of our games. We're now embarking on him starting a mentorship program with Brian Melso and Gabby a mentorship program where he can start recruiting younger students to be doing the same thing he's doing. It's not even a program, right? But this is what our budget supports. And all transportation services remain. And you know, you've seen our buses, we have quite a bit of them. And now, Kelly loves when I just take over and do the whole thing. But Kelly, you can do a couple
You've heard the
slides.
speech a couple times.
I have.
Okay, so just quickly, in terms of the budget and the numbers, a district school budget is required to be in 3 components: program, capital, administrative. The majority of your staff, instructional, bus drivers, teacher aides, are in the program section. That's 73%. So this is their salary, their benefits, their equipment, their materials and supplies. 15% is capital. That's your maintenance and custodial staff, upkeep of your buildings, your debt service, your utility costs. That's 15%. And finally, administrative at 11.8. That's your principals, your APs, your directors, your assistant superintendents, anybody.
Your legal.
Legal, auditing, anything in that category. So those are the 3 components of the budget.
And those are typical numbers, right? Actually, program numbers are, I think ours is a little lower than it was
Yeah, it's
last
usually
year.
between 70 and 75% for program, and then these are pretty typical depending on whether you have a lot of debt service or how much staff you have.
And capital I want to talk about for a few minutes because we still have debt, right? Which
Yes.
the capital is helping to pay off, what is it, $2.5 million a year that we're paying off on a debt that will be finished in 2025.
15, 16, yep. 25, 26, wow.
25, 26.
10 years later.
In 25, 26. So that 2.5 million is in that capital, but we invest money in capital. So think about, we've put air conditioning in all of our buildings in the last handful of years. Generators in each of our buildings, so we're not closing schools down. Any roof repair, boilers, all of that. The $500,000 pipe that we need to replace at Coman Hill that goes from Windmill over to Coman Hill. The water pipe under the road because it's due for a replacement. All of these things that we have to do are in capital. And because we put the money toward capital, we're not going out for more bonds. Because think about the fact that right now, we're still paying a bond from when I first started, almost 30 years ago, I think that bond was from, right? 29 years ago. So that's what we don't want to get ourselves into again. And most schools you'll find are bonded and broke, right? But that isn't the case. We've been very lucky with that.
We maintain our buildings on a yearly basis, so we don't have to wait and do a $20 million project at one time.
Yeah.
It's really a great way to do it. Okay, in terms of actual expenses, this is kind of a breakdown of where we are. Any school district, the majority of your expenses is related to your staffing, so salary and benefits. It's almost 80%. It's pretty consistent with any district in this area. It's between 75 and 80%. So that's every salary and benefits of our employees. Our second category is 14% contractual services, anything that we can't do in-house and we need to get a consultant or get a maintenance company to come in. That's the contractual, that's 14%. Debt service, as Jen spoke about, that's 2.6%. Supplies and equipment, only 2.5%. And then that's the maintenance projects at 1.7%. Again, that's what we put in the budget to maintain our buildings on a yearly basis.
And if you look at salaries and benefits, consider this. We've also done something that a lot of people haven't done. For decades, we have our own carpenter, our own electrician, right? So that is actually in the salaries, and we're not contracting out for much more money to get those jobs done.
Right, as well as transportation.
Transportation too, yeah.
Come on. Okay, here's a breakdown of the revenue. Unfortunately, in this area, Westchester, we don't receive a lot of state aid. It's only 5% for Byram Hills, so 88% of our revenue comes from a local taxpayer. 2% from pilots. Quickly, what pilots are is if a company feels their assessed value, how much they pay in taxes is too much, they'll talk to the county and the town to make a reduction, make an agreement, say I'm going to pay this amount of taxes over a 5, 6, 7 year period. So we currently have 2 pilots. And
One with IBM.
One Ingle Berman and one with IBM. And then the rest of the 1% is from other revenue. That's our county sales tax. We get a share of the county sales tax as well as interest earnings that we receive on our reserves. And then finally, fund balance appropriation. So that's how we pay for the increase of 2.87% or the $99.7 million. So here's a breakdown of the revenues. So the tax levy, you'll see last year's tax levy, this year's proposed tax levy. It's a tax levy increase of 1.93%. That's $1.6 million.
So in other words, even though we're at 2 point what budget to budget increase?
2.87.
Budget to budget increase, the amount that we're going out for property taxpayers is 1.93% increase. Right? So it's like, does that make sense to everyone?
That's the actual, we had a decrease in the pilots, as I spoke about, with Ingle Berman and IBM, a decrease of $172,000 based on an estimated pilot agreement with IBM coming up for next year. Other revenues, that was that 1% amount in the previous slide. That's up 14%. We've had a tremendous increase in interest earnings into next year and this year, so I've increased that amount. State aid, a 14% increase, about $600,000. And then finally, fund balance. In order to balance the budget, we need to kick in some fund balance and reserves, and that's an increase of $539,000. Okay, so in terms of tax rates, the majority of our taxpayers, 86%, are in the town of North Castle. The second biggest is Mount Pleasant at 13%, and then Newcastle and Bedford about 1% combined.
And don't be deceived, because you can have a Bedford address but be paying North Castle taxes.
Yes, I do get that question a lot.
Yeah.
Your mailing address could say Bedford, but the majority of them are in the town of Newcastle. This is about 41, 42 properties.
Yeah.
And Newcastle's about 44. So in terms of tax rate, so this is per $1,000 of assessed value. Okay, it's an increase of 2.6% for the town of North Castle. Newcastle 2.82%, Bedford an 8.3%, and then a decrease of 3.7% for Mount Pleasant. Now these rates changed, and I encourage you to take a look at the presentation from March 28th about assessed value. Something that the district doesn't control, the town assessors control on a yearly basis. That change in assessed value changes the share of your tax levy. So the total tax dollars that we propose, the share of that taxes gets spread out depending on changes and adjustments to assessed value on a yearly basis.
Yeah, so I'm going to explain that in layman's terms. So in layman's terms, right? I know, you do a great job, Kelly. You do a great job. I wouldn't know it if it weren't for you. All right, so in layman's terms, let's say that houses in Pleasantville sell for a lot of money in that particular year. The next year, the assessed value of a home in Pleasantville is higher because the house is sold for higher. Now that's great if you're selling your home, but as far as taxes are concerned, your assessed value goes up. Now let's say at the same time, Bedford sells only, and they only have a minimum number of homes there anyway, but that their homes sell for much lower, their assessed value drops. Those values have nothing to do with us, but they do take into consideration what piece of the pie you pay, right? So if you're assessed higher, then your taxes increase, and if you are assessed lower, your taxes likely decrease. Now, all of that said, I think about Pleasantville, Mount Pleasant, because they had such high assessments for so many years in a row that even when we had a 0% budget to budget increase, the taxes went up in Pleasantville. And it was like, we can't do anything more than a 0% budget to budget increase, and how are their school taxes still going up? And I did at that point compare the amount that somebody pays on an $800,000 home in taxes if your children went to Pleasantville versus your children going to Byram Hills, and the taxes were less for somebody living in Pleasantville going to Byram Hills, even though they were still increasing. Like I was just trying to get a sense of how do you control that, and there is no control for it, except for the fact that this year, Mount Pleasant, you'll see, has a minus 4.39% for like the first time. I mean, if you take a look at where is, Mount Pleasant has always had an increase, 5.89, and this is even when we've had 0% budget to budget increases. You'll even see, where was the one that went up 12% that time, or is that year over? Oh yeah, Bedford. One year, Bedford was up 12.18%. Right? Another year, it was down 8.39%. So you don't really think of your taxes fluctuating like that, but they do. Somehow where I live, they've only gone up. I've never seen any fluctuation, which surprises me now that I know what I know, right? So anyway, my town has to do with the budget. All right, so we have always tried to stay below the tax levy limit, right? So you look at the first column, the maximum allowable tax levy limit. So 2012, pretty much when I started in the district office, right, until now, at 1.93%. You'll see what all of the maximum allowable tax levies have been, and you'll see that every year, other than this year, we've remained below the tax levy limit. This year, 1.93% is not the 2018-19 4.59%, right? You're not talking about a major increase, but we do, particularly because of enrollment growth, have to go to the tax levy limit. But you can see that this is a responsible decision. If you look at the right-hand column, you will see that each of those years, that's the amount of money that we did not go up to the tax levy limit because we didn't need to, right? You won't find that in a lot of schools. You'll find most superintendents say, you should always go to the tax levy limit because you'll never recoup that money back. In my mind, it was fiscally responsible, and Kelly, to do this. And if we ever need to go over the tax cap because of enrollment or anything, we will do that. But in the meantime, you know, $1.3 million in 2021-22 was not put out as a responsibility of taxpayers, right? So we've been doing our due diligence, and this year we do feel like we need to go to the 1.93% because of this enrollment growth. Anyway, that's it.
Speaking of enrollment.
Oh yeah, speaking of enrollment. You know, keep in mind that they project this out to 27, 28, and these kids are like not even born yet, right? So it's hard to judge this, but we do have a demographer who does a pretty good job of this. And you'll see for 23, 24, we're expecting 2,349 kids, so about 48 more children. And that is just based on the buying and selling of homes, right, and births. So we also know we have some construction that's happening at Airport Campus. They are due to begin construction there. There are about 125 townhomes that are going in there. They're not age restricted. There's also an age restricted section of that. So that is going to bring more students. We also have Eagle Ridge, which is an IBM property that's in the process of being decided about homes there as well. But I don't anticipate, and I've been really on top of this, I don't anticipate that these numbers are going to flood our schools, that we are going to get to the point that we have to do construction or anything like that, keeping in mind that we were at one point about 500 or so students more than we are right now, right? So we still have that room to grow. We have to figure out where to put the kids because we've made a lot of beautiful STEAM spaces, right, and we're keeping them. So we have that all projected out. But we do have enrollment growth, which is a good thing, right? And Kelly, did I talk too much? Did you get a lot?
No.
All right. So
You spoke about these though already.
I did, right? So here is continuing the vision, and my predecessors have said that they wanted every K-11 child to have the same opportunities afforded our graduating seniors. And I say I want them to have more opportunities than our graduating seniors, and that's what we've been sticking to. We have been very successful as a school district because we're in a very cohesive community. There are lots of things troubling the world around us, and I feel very fortunate to be in a community that supports our schools, and we have a mission together to support these kids. I don't see that everywhere else, so I'm very grateful to that. And I would like you to go to our website under Curriculum and Instruction and Academic Departments to learn more. Also on our website, there's something called Special Recognition. It's a document that comes out from the district office that really captures the highlights of what has happened this year. And you'll see on the left-hand side, that is at Coman Hill, up on the hill at Coman Hill, and that is a patio that was donated by the Byram Hills Education Foundation. And every period you can find kids learning out there, which is fantastic. Something we learned from COVID, right? One silver lining from COVID, let's be outside. And on the right-hand side, also a BHEF grant. That is our startup program at the high school. So these are 3 students who are actually meeting with a community member who is helping them with their startup because we have mentors that come from the community, which is phenomenal. I'm not proud of this place at all, right? Nope. All right, go Kelly.
So the budget vote is May 16th. It's at HCC from 6:30 to 9 p.m.
And we also have, in addition to the budget vote, there are 2 board seats that are available, and we have our 2 existing board members who are vying for those seats again, and we do not have anyone else who has picked up a petition. But I do encourage you to go out to vote. We don't have a lot of votership a word?
I think so.
We don't have a lot, is it?
It is now.
It is now. We don't have a high amount of people coming out. For example, there have been years where, although we have 11,000 potential voters, we have about 450 people who come out to vote. Why is that important to go out to vote? Because if nobody's voting and there is a group of people who doesn't want to vote a school budget, then it's difficult for us. So we do want to hear every voice. It's important that every voice gets heard. And that is it.
Just keep a lookout for the newsletter. You'll get that in the
Yes.
mail about 7 days before the budget vote. Give you a little more information. Sure.
And Lara Stengel and I will be doing a budget video that I'll blast out to homes also, which is kind of like a repeat of this. I love it.
So you mentioned the 2 pilots. When are they expiring, and then what will happen once those expire?
Good question. So we thought that IBM was going to expire next year. It was scheduled to, but they're going to renegotiate and have an additional pilot for 5 to 7 years. So I estimated that amount going forward, but we should have that number fairly soon. Ingle Bergman has about 6 years left on their pilot agreement. Now, when a pilot expires, it's a long story, but there's a formula, there's a tax levy formula, which you can get the maximum allowable tax levy. So it's a piece of that formula. So if the pilot comes off, it really reduces the maximum allowable tax levy you can get. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you go through that formula, it can be high or low depending on reduction of the pilot. So you take that pilot out, it's going to make your maximum tax level really low for that year. Okay, which could be a problem depending on increases to health insurance, increases to salaries. So it's less tax levy you can propose. You have to take more from reserves or make a reduction to your budget. It can be a big problem.
We've been doing a great job with reserves. Like, we have a capital reserve fund that we took out a couple of years ago. How many? 5 maybe? Pre-COVID? I don't even know. COVID, like, I've lost track of time. But we do have a capital reserve that we have been putting money into, so when we have to do major projects, that we're not going out for a bond. And we'll use the reserves if we need to use the reserves. We always have built into the budget every year a certain amount of reserves we're allowing ourselves to utilize. Fortunately, we have a little bit, but we haven't had to dip into those reserves very much.
So we're not in a problem with that.
No, I'm just
right
curious.
now. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
You know why? Because it's the assessed value of these office spaces. I mean, when I drive through Armonk, I see a lot of full stores. When I drive through many other towns, I don't see storefronts, I don't see office buildings, I see empty office buildings everywhere. So the assessed value of an office building is very low right now. So the fact that we have pilots is sustaining that. And anybody that goes out for a reassessment, they're going to be assessed at a much lower value than they were during that time. Which is ironic because IBM's headquarters is here and they're full, right? But the assessed value of that in general is low, so that's low for IBM as well.
You might not know the answer to this, but are the employees all back at IBM?
So I know a lot are. There are some that are remote, but they're pretty active
that's
over at the IBM campus. Yeah, we were there last summer. They allowed us to go over there and do our administrative retreat. So was that last summer? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For 2 days. Wow. And it was milling with people. Yeah. It's a beautiful facility.
Is there a number or percentage set aside in the budget for like discretionary and like new programs and forward thinking stuff like that, or is that like just sort of baked in all over the place? I remember years ago when you did a similar presentation, like seeing like it was like 1 point something, it was like some small number, and we were all like, wow, like it's just very telling that a lot of the budget is locked up in things that sort of like salaries, buildings, stuff that has to happen.
Totally, and I have to say that I've been here longer than the Byram Hills Education Foundation has been here, but I have seen a complete metamorphosis in our schools because of them. Think about all of those programs that we have at the high school who were started with the BHEF, the kids outside on the patios for BHEF, Global Scholars when they took 20 of our teachers and administrators and did a leadership conference in them so that they could start the Global Scholars program, going up to Harvard for a think tank to get that program started. Like, that doesn't come from taxpayer funds. We've just been very fortunate that this community believes in the education of these children, and they're trusting of us when we go forward with an idea. So, yeah. Yeah, we're a public school, you know,
Yeah.
we forget. All right, now that we've driven your morning to something wonderful, thank you so much for being here. And any other questions before we move on? All right, and always contact Kelly Seibert if you do have questions. He's available.
That's right.
And thanks for listening. And then when you get it on the video sent home, you may want to look at it to see our board president, Lara Stengel, but other than that, it will be the same information. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.